Did you ever notice that the religious make an awful lot of excuses for why they're getting made fun of? It's never their fault, of course. Someone else is always to blame, and we're going to see some more of that today. It's never as convincing as they seem to think that it is, though, so, away we go. This is going to be sort of a shorter video, going to look at a Mormon channel called Thoughtful Faith. And it's nothing remotely of the sort. This is why the religious are so utterly unimpressive, but we'll get to that in a second because it should become painfully clear as we continue. Nobody is surprised by their tactics anymore. We just expect the rampant stupidity and childishly blind faith that we see all the time, because what else do they have? Let's see.
There's a very typical stance that an atheist will have towards Christians, first of all. And then that disdain is even deeper when it comes to Latter-day Saints. It's like Christians are a joke and Mormons are a bad joke, right? Like that's kind of the levels to it.
I don't think that. I mean, yes, Mormonism is a bad joke, but all religions are. Every single religious cult out there, and let's be honest, they're all cults. They're not just one or two. That's 42,000 distinct sects of Christianity. They're all cults. And they're all pathetic. I'm an equal opportunity critic when it comes to abject stupidity. I think you're all idiots. Now, I think we can all recognize this immediately these days, how the religious are just paranoid. Well, they're all out to get us. No, we're just pointing out how dumb you are. If you don't want to be criticized, don't be dumb. But I don't think they can really help it. Anyway, let's see where else this goes.
And you wrote a really interesting blog post. I believe it was called, Is Mormonism the Least Plausible Form of Christianity? And in it, you kind of had summed up your sentiment that you had shared with Sam Harris. And I'll actually quote what it says here.
We'll get to that in a second. No, I don't think Mormonism is the least credible form of Christianity, because I don't think Christianity is credible, period. Of course, this isn't just limited to Christianity, it's all religion. Any belief system that has to make up imaginary friends in the sky to get through the day, their adherents, they've got some serious problems. It's exactly where I start to be very, very critical, and you should be too. It isn't like any of these religions have gotten anywhere remotely defensible. They're all just childish, wishful thinking. Hell, I don't even think Scientology is worse than these lunatics, because they're all nuts. They've got to try to be better.
You wrote in the article that that you shared the same sentiment as Sam Harris, and you quoted him. And Sam Harris said this, and you said you shared the sentiment, which is that, quote, Mormonism is objectively less credible than Christianity because Mormons are committed to believing nearly all the implausible things that Christians believe, plus many additional implausible things, end quote.
That might be true. But the way that I look at it anyhow, believing even one implausible thing, and the things that the religions tend to believe, they aren't just implausible, they're ludicrous, but believing even one is one ludicrous thing too many. You don't get crazier because you suddenly believe more than one insane thing. The problem is that initial nutty belief. You have to get rid of them all, and these people have zero interest in that.
And you went on to say, Christianity plus a lot of weird, implausible things. I think that's an accurate summation of how many view Mormonism. But I've come to believe that that view is entirely mistaken. That caught my attention.
I will admit, I want to see how he justifies that too. Granted, it's probably not going to change my views, because I think we all know that the religious are just baldly rationalizing their way out of their problems, instead of acknowledging that the things that they believe are completely rationally unjustifiable at all, and, not believing them anymore. They make excuses for why these things, which cannot be rationally or intellectually validated in any way, well, they're just going to believe it anyhow because, fee-fees. Just because they want to. That's not a good enough reason, though. Not by a long shot.
So tell us a little bit about maybe how that started to happen.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, so Harris is right that if theory B is just the same as theory A, but it's, theory B is less plausible than theory A. If theory B is just theory A plus a bunch of weird implausible things, like that's obviously true.
Now, I suspect that he's going to go into some of those weird, implausible things in a second, but I wanted to stop here to say that you don't become more plausible by rejecting some, but not all, of the implausible things that you believe. It's like saying that the UFO nut gets more rational because they reject the idea that the aliens are dissecting cows, but they still think that they're shoving probes up people's backsides. No, you're still crazy. You don't become not crazy until your beliefs align with objective reality as best as can be achieved. All of your beliefs, not some, not the ones you're not really attached to. It's like saying, well, I keep seeing a gigantic red dragon, but at least I'm not seeing the purple unicorn anymore, so I'm better. No, you're not.
But that's just not how I see Mormonism. I think that some LDS theology, like it's tantamount to just Christianity minus a bunch of weird implausible things. So some of those weird implausible things being like creation ex nihilo, or the view that, this world was created by a perfect being of unlimited power, or, eternal conscious torment for the vast majority of humanity. Like, you reject like the standard incoherent view of the Trinity. It's like, that's not Christianity plus weird things. That's Christianity minus weird things.
You still believe in an imaginary man in the sky, though. You are not going to be minus weird things until you're minus all of the weird things. Stop believing weird stuff. You don't just get to pick and choose. It's all or nothing. It doesn't work any other way.
Unless you think it's somehow advantageous to advocate this totally incoherent view of the Trinity, or, it's actually, it's a huge probability boost for Christianity when you say that most people are going to be eternally consciously tormented, or, creation ex nihilo posits some kind of, or has some kind of advantage. And like, I just don't see it that way. I don't know any atheists who would see it that way. So I think that, a lot of it just comes down to prejudice, because Mormonism is so recent and so near, like a lot of the stuff happened like, pretty close to where I'm sitting right now. And like, that's just kind of weird, like I feel like David Hume made this point where he's like, a lot of these crazy stories, it always has to happen in some far off enchanted land, and whenever it's like here, it just seems like sillier somehow.
No, because you still have fundamentally lunatic beliefs in things that are not demonstrably true. You are still exercising blind faith in things you absolutely cannot provide evidence for. There is no prejudice involved here at all. You're just making excuses because you don't like that people don't embrace your lunacy wholesale. You know who else does that? Scientologists. They have the same empty claims as you do because they don't like people laughing at them either. Well, too bad. If you don't want to be a complete laughingstock, stop believing stupid crap. Or at the very least, stop telling people about it. But yeah, ideally, stop believing garbage. It's the only way to be sane.
And there are like legitimate criticisms of Mormonism, like, but they seem to lean very heavily on like the historical and scriptural side of things. And I'm more interested in philosophy. Like, I don't care as much about that stuff.
Well, you should. If your beliefs are not true, and I mean demonstrably true, with evidence, with verification, with some way to show that it's not just crap in your head, then you have no business believing it. It's that simple. Or it should be if these people were at all rational, but Clearly they're not. It's why all of the excuses and bald rationalizations and made-up garbage that the religious pile on their beliefs, those don't impress me a bit. Why should they? We keep coming back to the only questions that matter. What do you believe and why? How do you know it's true, and how do you demonstrate it without resorting to faith? Nothing else really means anything. Answer those, and then we'll get on to the rest.
And I've heard Mormon apologists try to answer a lot of those like historical objections, and, sometimes it's plausible, sometimes it's not. But what's sure to me is that it's at least as plausible as the stuff that Christians say about the problems with the Bible.
And here, you notice that he's doing the exact same thing that other religions do. Well, Mormon historians. Yeah, but I don't care about Mormon historians. I care about reality. This is why I don't care about anyone who says, well, from a Christian perspective, or according to Muslims, or whatever. You have to justify your beliefs first. Then we can talk about the specifics. You have to start off with, here's how I know a God exists, and then present your evidence for that God. And that goes for any God. Justify that first with evidence, and then we can move on. However, the religious never ever want to do that, you notice. They want to start after they've arrived at their conclusions through blind faith. Remember, the title of this video is Atheist Philosopher Surprised by Mormonism. But I don't see how this is going to surprise anybody. At least, not anyone with half a brain. I mean, it might surprise somebody that these people are so dumb, but it's not going to make anybody change their mind, because you haven't shown a rational path to your basic assumptions yet. You might want to get on that.
So I just don't see Mormonism as like, oh, it's just so much less plausible. It's just a bad joke compared to Christianity, which is just a joke. It's like, no, like their apologetics, your guys' apologetics is like just as convincing / unconvincing as the stuff that people will rattle off about, camels in the Old Testament or whatever it is. Like, so it seems like you guys are on equal footing when it comes to that stuff. But then on the more like philosophical side, you have definite advantages.
I have to be honest here. I don't see any of those, because here's the thing. I think you're all nuts. Granted, as we should expect by now, they're on a channel watched almost entirely by, wait for it, fellow Mormons, who aren't going to ask any of the difficult questions and who aren't going to doubt the basic preconceptions. So they don't care if all of the faith stuff is already baked in. That's what they expect after all. I only stumbled across it because it had atheist in the title and YouTube search results kicked it my way. I don't have a lot of Mormon videos pop up in the feed, and therefore here we are. I try to do them when we see them. They're still doing all the same things wrong as every other theist video out there, and it's no better for them than it is for anyone else. It's why this keeps coming up time and time again. They can't go back to step one, and we shouldn't expect anything less. This is how religion needs to justify itself to those who are not religious, and it never, ever, ever can. And that's kind of sad, isn't it? For a channel called Thoughtful Faith, there isn't a lot of thought going on here, is there? Kind of a problem. There are a lot of pompous-sounding religious channels out there that never ever stand up to their promise because they just don't give a damn. They just want to believe. But wanting to believe doesn't make it true, and if you care about anything but truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth, then you're doing intelligence wrong. Knock it off. This is why you get laughed at.
Boom, dicky, 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 boom.